Welcome to Beyond the Bench podcast. And on this episode, we are going to discuss the mentorship in the automotive and transmission industry. So tonight I have with me Mr. Jeff Martell from Evolution Drivetrain in Canada. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I started in this industry in 1996. I was fresh out of high school, give or take. I was working in a wrecking yard. In May of 1998, I was recruited to what was at the time, medium-sized remanufacturing facility for transmissions, differentials, transfer cases, that sort of thing. And I ended up working there from May of 1998 until June of 2010, when I walked out in a fury of rage and anger. And then I went on my own in July of 2010, and I've been doing that ever since. I've been on my own then. I've been in all levels of this industry. I've worked in building, I've worked in advertising, I've worked in sales, I've worked in management, I work in ownership. Now I do all of it right now with myself and 1.5 employees. I have a girl that comes in and does some paperwork and data entry for me, and I have one full-time guy who does R&R and tries not to screw up too much. I've been, you name it. I've done it all. I'm here. I can tell you all about all levels of it. I've been mentored. I've done mentoring. I've worked with some great guys over the years who are fantastic technicians, difficult personalities. I've worked with some guys who are good personalities, but not great technicians. I've worked with guys who are illiterate. I've literally been in a technical room with a guy and I've watched his eyes and I've been like, this guy can't read. And he's building 4L60Es. I've seen it all, my friend.
He can see it. He can see it and understand it. But as far as like reading comprehension is like offset.
No, not comprehension. He literally could not read. He literally could not read. I'm not joking. He literally could not read.
So he just couldn't read at all, but he could comprehend what he was doing.
That's debatable. That's open to interpretation, my friend.
Okay. All right. So who was the most impactful mentor in your career and what did they teach you?
Okay. So this is the emotional topic for me, right? Because this guy worked for me for a period of years, as well as I worked with him at the previous remanufacturing facility, and we did not end on good terms. I had to let him go right before Christmas 2018. I was in an environment with him at the time where he was angry all the time. He was angry at the world. He was angry at me. He's angry at his wife. He's angry at his dog. He's angry at traffic. He's angry at just everything all the time. And he was like this a lot. But I learned more from him on a technical standpoint than anybody I had ever worked with. And I can literally trace down a gigantic portion of the knowledge that I gained from one conversation written on a napkin in a technical room with him. And this is like way before I was on my own. This is probably circa 2003, where he was literally writing down on a piece of paper the early days of how automatic transmissions work, right? And how the early engineers had to figure out the hydraulic pressures for governor pressure to generate 1 psi of pressure per mile per hour of road speed in order to achieve a shift. So say your 1-2 shift was going to occur at 15 psi. Well, that was 15 miles per hour. So that was where that spring would have to stroke that valve and send oil to the next clutch pack. And then say your 2-3 shift was going to occur at 30 miles an hour. That PSI from the governor had to generate 30 PSI to get that shift to happen at 30 miles per hour. And of course, that had to be overcome by TV pressure or throttle pressure to force a downshift to occur at that road speed. So working with him was, incredibly intelligent, but at times very difficult guy to work with.
Yeah, and I've seen that, and I've been through that with one individual, and he's not from the States. He's not from Canada. He's from overseas entirely. And just his demeanor on how he approached things and how he looked at things was just so demeaning, but you could learn a lot from him. And he was so direct. And that was something that I took into, and I kind of put myself back at a time. And he's a good colleague, still a good colleague of mine today, but he's not in the technical automotive industry now. He's in the industrial side. And his quality of life is a lot better from where he was at and what he's moved into now. But the thing about that, the newer generation coming in may or may not attract to that. So what could we give to them on that type of demeanor that is a mentorship to this? Like take from it.
Yeah, in my opinion, like that doesn't work with the current generation at all. And I get that perspective, not from just the industry and the business. I get that because I coach youth sports. I've been working with youth for my daughter's 15 now, so the last 9 years, I've been coaching 10-year-old boys the last year. I've been coaching 15-year-old girls. And what you start to discover is that type of approach may have worked on our generation. We were a little bit harder. I mean, I come from a background of playing rugby where guys would run you into the ground and you ran till you barfed. We had coaches. This guy could kick a ball. If you screwed up a drill, he would literally take a swig of his cigarette, throw his clipboard on the ground, scream, "God damn it, guys," and kick the ball 60 meters. And you had to run back there, back. And the last guy back had to do push-ups. That
Yep.
doesn't work now. So with these kids, you have to have a mentality of like, you're coaching and you're being firm, but you're always positive. And that mentality of old school, hard mentality, it doesn't work anymore. Now you're having to be constantly positive no matter what happened. And that's not a bad thing. It's just the way that
Yeah.
society has changed and evolved. And I mean, I've worked with kids who are, I've worked with, especially the girls side. Like I love coaching youth sports with girls because they're very responsive. A lot of them want structure and they want discipline and they want to be encouraged. But the way you approach them is very different from how you would approach people from our segment. I mean, I have two really great coaching stories that I'll share here that hopefully people watch this will pick up on. Right? One of them
Yeah.
was my daughter was young and she was not aged out to play 15U. She was aged to play 12U, but the kids wanted her to play up. And I ran into a couple of girls one day and like, "Well, you're going to coach us this year?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." Like, "Well, if you're not coaching, we're not playing." I mean, well, if that's not a huge compliment, like, I don't know what is. And then I had
Yeah.
another incident. My single greatest moment of coaching and whatnot. I had this girl who played for me for like age 6 to 15U girls. And she was steady and reliable, but nothing spectacular, but she always played okay. Well, we're in semifinals and she's having a terrible game. She's taking foul after foul after foul, and she takes a penalty inside the box, which in soccer is a penalty kick.
Yeah.
Luckily, our keeper saves it, right? But I have to pull her. I have no choice. That's it. If she's not out, I'm in trouble because the team is melting down. So I pull her out and we hang on. We get a 1-0 win and we're going to go to finals. And between games, I'm walking from our field to another field to see a friend of mine's son play, and I see her. And I'm like, "Come and walk with me. I want to have a discussion with you." I'm like, "You realize why I had to pull you out of the game, right?" She said, "Well, I made the penalty in the box." I'm like, "That wasn't it. It was your teammates were all let down by what was happening." I'm like, you played well for me for years. I'm like, "If I put you back in the finals, can you turn it around and play like you played for me for the last like 6, 7 years?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, I got you, coach. I can do this. Finals, lights out. Didn't make a single mistake. The single biggest jump of maturity I've seen in a young athlete, a young person in my entire life. Won the game, won the championship. Just like that. Like by approaching them in a non-negative way. I told her, like, "I'm not just a coach, I'm a dad too. I don't feel good about taking you off the field, right? I want you to succeed. I
Yeah.
want you to understand why I had to pull you for the team." Lights out. She was lights out. Like it was an incredible moment.
And that's a style that actually does work in the industry as well. Taking that approach directly in the positive light instead of a negative side of it, because the more negativity that you bring to one style, it either brings them down instead of lifting them up
For sure.
and trying
And
to
when you're
bring
working
them
with,
forward.
for sure, when a kid makes a mistake, and the kid who works for me he's reliable. He'll come in every day. He's always late. He'll work through lunch. He'll catch up at the end of the day. It's just the nature. But
Yeah.
if you're hard on him, you can see he bucks, right? He's stressed. Whereas if you coach it through and say, "Hey, this is why we have to do this way, and this is how this works." Most of the time, they're going to adapt and they're going to learn from it. Whereas if you're hard on them all the time, they're going to pull back and they're going to be negative towards you because they get negative on them. And they're just from a different era. Like they're not conditioned for the same way we were 20 years ago, where we didn't get a lot of positive encouragement. And some of us, it turned us around and grew us, and other ones just completely shut down. And so what is the better path going forward? Well, at this stage, I believe the positivity is the better path going forward. Being able to coach them through and educate them on the fundamentals. And that is what I think is really lacking in the trade right now, is fundamentals of operation, fundamentals like theory of operation. The kids will come out of the trade schools and they're really weak on basic theory. The reality is that everything around us hasn't changed since the 1920s or 30s. Everything still works the same. It's still basic physics, still basic operation. It's just that now it's a solenoid doing it instead of a valve and hydraulics, right? It's computer control. And in some ways, that's an advantage. In the old days of hydraulic transmission failure, you had to know the hydraulics of that unit, what circuit were you chasing, what spring was a problem, what check valve was a problem, what plate was a problem. Now you get a solenoid failure where you know what circuit you're chasing right away. I got an 8L90 coming on Tuesday that I know has a harsh one too. Well, I already know I'm looking at an S6 damper problem, because that's what's controlling that clutch coming on in the 1-2 shift. So I have an advantage in that basic knowledge. But I know that because I've studied the fundamentals to know that if I have a hard shift, what's a hard shift caused by? Well, it's caused by an accumulator problem. The accumulator is a pillow, right? It's a cushion for the shift, right? Valve strokes, some goes to accumulator, some goes to clutch pack. So
Yeah,
the
and the computer
positivity
tries
side of
to overcome and tries to fix one section when there's a problem. Then it tries to add more and more and more, and then it becomes a reaction.
it's a reaction problem. And that reaction isn't always correct too, as I've discussed before, where it will
Yeah,
generate a code for one problem, but that's not necessarily what you're going to find when the unit's apart. It may say you
yeah.
have this clutch stuck on and this gear ratio error. That's not the case. That's just the data it interprets from what it's seeing happen. So
On that point, to where the fundamentals are not met, that they need more understanding of the fundamentals, is what I'm getting from some of the ASEP students and some of the comments that I'm feeding into, and just paying attention to what's going on industry wide through social media. And the biggest thing that I'm getting with the feedback is the manufacturers are pushing, well, I'll say this, GM is pushing more of the fundamental baseline and more classes to do for like online training, and they're doing specific assessments if you want to take to pull back in some areas you may miss out on or you may not know. And they even have a full boot camp. They have individual boot camps for each section of the automotive field, and plus one full 8-week training class that came up just in the first of this year. And I brought that up to the service manager at the dealer, because some of the ASEP students looking at that, that's where the dealer can pay for the training for them to go through exactly what they're going through already, that they're paying to go through in college, that the dealer can do that for the new tech, and it would be full on by a GM instructor, not somebody at a college, and that is full specific.
are these online or
And they
in-person
would have
classes?
in person.
For me, online is terrible. I'm not a great online learner. I'm always better in person, hands-on, seeing what is actually happening. It surprised me. I don't know about this side of it, right? Because I'm independent. I've never worked in a dealership environment. I've always been in
Yeah.
independent facilities, right? So I feel like the manufacturers generally are pushing to replace, not repair. And I feel like they just shove parts in, let it go, or even sell a new
I agree.
vehicle, not repair the existing vehicle. And then so the fundamentals knowledge that I'm referring to when I speak about accumulators reconnecting here. We got a connection issue here.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you see me? Or
Yeah,
am I
no problem at
frozen?
all. Just me reconnecting. Nope, you're not frozen. So what I see is,
I don't know if it's on your end.
there we go. So the fundamentals themselves are they truly like base fundamentals, or are they like current, like this is basic information you should already know when you're coming out of college? And then is the college instructing true base fundamentals, or are they instructing like current information back? So again, I come back to that conversation that I had with him years ago on a napkin. That's base fundamentals of hydraulic operation back to the 1930s, because that's really still how everything actually works. Everything works like that. Nothing's
Yes.
changed on the motive. It's just it's been adapted to our current technology, right? So when they come out of that college, let's say they're going into automatic transmissions, do they understand how hydraulics work through a valve, through a hydraulic, through an accumulator, how a piston strokes? I mean, how many times have you had a guy say, well, the lip seal tore and that was the cause of failure? That's never the cause of failure. That's the response to the failure. There's been a hydraulic leak that's caused the clutch to burn. The piston's overstroked, and the mechanical return spring has pushed it back once there's no longer oil there. That's what's torn the lip seal. But if the kids aren't taught that, like, oh, the lip seal failed. The lip seal's never failed. The lip seal
Correct.
is the reaction to the previous failure, right? But they don't know that because that's not what's taught. It's not in the basic true fundamentals.
So looking over everything, it's pretty new to me. It's just something that I brought up, and seeing that they're focusing on more training, and the kickback or the response that I'm seeing is that the manufacturer is pushing more training because of problems and issues with either like a comeback issue or a repeat repair problem. And Alex kind of pushed on it a lot, that especially about like warranty times and how things even roll with that. And I'm working with or talking to another mobile mechanic right now on some of his labor times, just something he just popped up in a feed, and then talked about it on YouTube. And we started having a discussion where some of that labor time is completely wrong. And you'll see it between different guides, and just trying to pull all the way back, but not trying to get off too far off topic of this.
No.
But
it's true.
It's something that Alex really sees, and he knows and understood, and he wasn't afraid to say it, that the bigger problem that is perceived in that aspect is the pay and the scaling
100%.
in the flat rate.
100%. Perfect example.
And
If you
that
look at
becomes
the
a
R
big
and R time,
problem.
look at the R&R time on a 3-liter eco diesel motor on a Ram 1500. The boat time on it's like 16 hours. There's no way you're swapping that motor out in 16 hours. You could be Superman; it would never happen. You're talking minimum 24 to 30 hours with a cab pull and everything else that has to go on to get that motor out of there. And this happens in every aspect of the industry, whether it's transmission, engine, brakes. The labor times are absolute trash. So how do you recruit and maintain young people when they get there and they have to buy $1,000 worth of tools? And then on top of it, you're paying them peanuts wages. Like most of these guys are coming out at $24, $28 an hour. It's impossible. You're not going to recruit the best. And then the second problem to that is what's needed to work on cars nowadays isn't necessarily the old school mechanics. It's computer nerds. Well, guess what computer nerds don't want to do? They don't want to work on cars. Right? So you have a double whammy there. Your recruitment is going to be a problem in that you need guys who are not only good with their hands, but they're also tech savvy. And it's not that they're not out there. But to get the best of the best, you're going to have to pay them. And that's just the reality of it. And you're going to have to pay them like fairly, not just pay them like okay and nudge them along where they're barely making a living. That guy has to go into there every single day and feel like he's getting paid his value. Because if he's not, he's going to step into a different industry. You've got all these guys who are in that mindset. They can step into being an electrician, a plumber, numerous other trades where the wages coming out are higher to begin with. The tool costs are lower, and the other factor is the dealership drama is lower. They don't have as much BS to deal with when they're working at a dealership, dealing with service writers and managers and everybody else is there. Never mind what's going on in behind, right?
So that's something that I've been bringing to the attention of everybody that's at the dealer. And I was requested to come back to aid and assist in a downtime frame. And at the point that they couldn't get an 8L90, it had extended warranty involved into it, and they were not going to rebuild it. Like the extended warranty wanted to put a reman unit into it. So it was a long conversation with everybody. And that was the 19 GMC Sierra I did the video on with using Superior parts.
Yep.
And running through
Did
that
that work,
whole
by the
entire
way?
situation,
Did the Superior
not
parts work,
exactly.
by the way? No
I had to
way.
pull it back out.
For shutter or
I had to
for
pull it
hard
back
shift?
out. It was for a shutter. And even putting the Sonic stuff back into it, like it was a full Sonic zip kit. So all of it, even every single valve into it. And the nightmare situation with this truck was the fact that it was the second owner. So the original owner, I come to find out, brought this vehicle for all these problems with a shutter, slip, bang, bumps, and had some codes that were set into it. But it was nothing like that would lead me to electrical or worrying about a solenoid problem to kind of gauge where we're going to go with this thing. So customer declined, went across the street to the Dodge dealership, traded it in.
Okay.
They cleared the codes and sold it as is with an extended warranty, and it ended over at
Back
the dealership. So it opened up a can of worms, and I'm trying to have a discussion with everybody in the dealer. And after I built the unit, put everything together, and even after I pulled everything back out with the Sonic stuff, it was still there. I could feel it. I knew it was there, but nobody else could tell it was there. I'm like, there's still an underlying.
You could feel a shudder, right?
In dynamic mode only.
As soon as it was in second gear and dynamic was on, that's the other key to this. So it's been my experience, and I ran this the first time probably, it's got to be 5 or 6 years now. I remember the customer, I knew him well. It was 10 minutes from me. The usual solution for an 8L90, guys will go after the fluid first. Like, yeah, I mean, I have varying opinions on ULV. I don't think ULV is worth shit. I think ULV is actually part of the problem. I have found that the way to fix all of them, like without any question whatsoever, that has worked, has been either new or properly rebuilding the valve body. I have not used the Superior yet. I've used the Sonax. I have one to do this week the same way. Running a regular synthetic multi, get away from the ULV. I firmly believe the ULV is a problem. And then disabling the DOD, the AFM completely, and disabling lockup until sixth gear, and they never come back. Those trucks will actually go into AFM and into DOD in second gear, and it won't indicate it on the dash. It will only indicate it on the data on the scan tool. And what you'll see happen is the truck will go 1-2 shift, DOD, vibrate, drive like shit. And the combination is the combination of the lockup shuttering and the motor being in 4-cylinder mode. Get rid of those two, truck is gone. You never see it come back.
Yeah, that's mostly what we do. The situation was this is not a vehicle that's at an independent shop.
No.
And I've already had so many conversations with everybody. I'm like, somebody's going to spend some money to fix this for this customer, regardless. But the warranty's not going to pay for nothing. The dealer's not going to do one thing or the other. And I tried to have a minor sit down conversation with the customer, trying to educate him on the system. He didn't want to change nothing. He wanted the dynamic mode in it. He wanted the start stop system still there. He loved everything about the truck. He didn't want to change anything about the features. And that was at a point to where I had to stop with the tuning side and fixing that, and just had to kind of pull back and take the Superior kit out, put the Sonic stuff in it. And I knew it was still there. Nobody else felt it. And just, but it had to.
Your hands are tied. Yeah, your hands are tied at the dealership level. There's nothing you could do about it. That's just the politics of being in that environment versus being independent.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of, most of the guys do see that. Even the ASEP students see basically everything that I see. So they watch all of us and what we're trying to do as far as learning and understanding. So bringing that light to the mentorship that I'm teaching them is that what they're going through and what they're learning in the beginning is going to be the basic knowledge. And then there's an outside world that's going to teach you a heck of a lot more beyond the experience that you're in.
Absolutely. And problem that I see is that the basic knowledge coming out of the trade colleges is just not adequate for what's happening in the real world. Okay. So we're in the topic of trade schools and coming out with basic knowledge. And part of the fundamental problems that I see is that the kids come out of the college without real world training. Like, they have some theory, they have some practical and whatnot, but I have a great example of this. I had this guy working for me. He's a Red Seal certified guy. He's certified. He's done his apprenticeship. He's good to go. And we're working on a Ford with stainless steel bolts. If you're familiar with 6.7 liter power strokes, they use stainless steel bolts on the EGR, on the exhaust, in these places and whatnot. And I say to this kid on the way out that night, because I have to leave early to get my kids, I'm like, crack all those bolts tonight while that thing is hot, and then take the thing apart tomorrow. You'll be fine. Yeah. Okay. I come in the next morning. He beats me there. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I broke the heads off those bolts. You didn't crack them last night, did you? Well, no, I packed up and I went home. Like, and you're sitting here with a bunch of taps and drills and all this shit. Has anybody taught you how to use a MIG welder? Go get the MIG welder and some nuts. I'll have these things out in about 5 minutes. But I told you last night for a reason. Like, crack those bolts off. Didn't know how to use a MIG welder coming out of tech school. I'm like, come on, man. And right, that type of training should be in the college. Is like, yo, you're in the Rust Belt. You're going to run into broken bolts. You need to know how to use a MIG welder, how to use grinder, how to stay away from your taps and dies. That's your last resort in the field.
Yeah, that's most of the longest and
probably cost you the most.
Most of the guys that we're teaching, 100%. Like even just simplified stuff like that, and glow plugs, how to remove everything. Yeah, in order to do that. Yep.
Glow plug's a good one. Yep. Glow plug's a great one, right? Because the glow plug on the Duramax, especially, they're a pain because of where they are. Super easy example on those glow plugs. Take the fender liners out, drive that truck around, get it hot as all hell, crack those glow plugs, go home. Take it apart the next morning. They're going to come out like butter. Mm-hmm. You try to crack those glow
Ben
plugs
just had
cold,
one
they're
where
going to break off in the heads and you're in for a
this was on
really bad day.
An 18 Duramax, having to replace an injector on, and the injector O-ring stuck in the bore, and he couldn't get it out. He spent an entire day with a slide hammer trying to get it out to the point to where it was done.
Yep.
And he ended up cracking the valve cover, so he had to replace the head.
Yeah, break the rocker box. Yeah, I've been there before. You had to break the rocker box because it's so corroded in there. It's happened. I've seen it. That happens sometimes. You just put something like Worth makes a good product for that, but it's not 100%. Sometimes you can get a truck in that is just that. I had one truck come in. It was an LLY. I knew the truck. It was in for something else. It ended up in another shop. The guy from there called me. Do you want to do the injectors on this? I'm like, nope. I've seen that truck, and I know it was going to be bad. 32 hours later, he got the injectors done in that truck. Broke all the rocker boxes, everything to get them out of here because they were so dissimilar metal corrosioned into those rocker boxes. Yeah, they were not coming up.
Yeah, because I was there once on a brand new Duramax engine. So this one was tuned deleted. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't tuned. I'll say that. They didn't even turn off the codes. They just unplugged everything and removed everything from the truck, and it probably had close to 300. It was 270,000 miles on it, and it came in with no compression on cylinder 6. I'm like, good Lord, man. It just killed this thing. So it's gone, needs an engine. And I didn't even know about it that was coming in. Service writer had spoke with the customer about the entire thing and sold the job for $11,000. How much is the engine? From GM. It was
down there, I don't know.
she
Up here,
quoted
the
the
engine
price
alone
of
is
the
like
engine.
1,000.
She didn't quote any labor on it.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So she didn't add any
Right,
time
never
on
mind the
it, so we were
36
back and
hours it's
forth.
going to take to swap that thing out.
So I put the engine in, new fuel system, new turbo, new injectors, did the whole 9 yards, full on. Yes, it was. And
That's $30,000.
do everything set up right.
That's 30 grand. Yeah, like easily.
No, I ended up going back to the service writer and actually pulling
This was the service advisor,
the owner of the truck to the side, and like everybody in the same sense of why it was quoted out that price. Now it went from there to 28,000. It was 28,000 before tax. And so I put the engine in, did everything. It goes away. Everything's
Yeah, I
fine.
believe it.
2 weeks later, it comes back.
I believe it.
Like a manifold's cracked or something like that. So we go take a look at it. And I'm like, no, it's blowing by on an injector. So I'm like, all right, let's replace the injector. So I replace the injector. I'm like, this is kind of weird. So I replace the injector and it comes back 3 days later doing the same thing. And to find out the bores for the injector were oversized on a brand new engine. 2 of them were leaking when it came back.
What?
2. Yeah. Past the copper washers, past the O-rings.
Past the copper washers leaking out.
I even like it had new hold downs and everything. And I'm like, something's really fishy.
Never
so
seen
I
that.
ended up
I've
having
seen
to
it.
replace the cylinder head on a brand new engine.
Yeah. Never seen that. I've seen that on BMW X5s 2014 to 2018. They're bad for that. Like they just lift at some point during ownership, usually around 120,000 miles, and you'll be doing a service in the vehicle and you'll pull the intake decoration cover off and you'll see like mounds of carbon sitting on top of the valve cover. And the thing's running and driving fine, but it's blowing carbon past the brass washer, past the copper washer. And it's just got this like leak. And it might throw an injector code, but there's no performance issue.
This thing never said a code or anything.
It might
Just
say
came
like
in with
cylinder 3 performance, but
noise
it's
and
totally
nothing.
fine. Yeah.
That was wild. Replaced the cylinder head, never saw the truck again. So let's see if I can stay on point.
Yeah, for sure.
Here we go. All right. So the role of mentorship. Okay. A lot of the technicians either gatekeep and keep a lot of information to themselves, and some of the guys in the transmission industry that I've been to, like an HP tuner class, have came to me directly on somebody that they've trained, they've had with them for a long period of time, and all of a sudden they got real good at things, left the shop, went up into another shop of their own, and then bad-mouthed the other shop to try to take their business. So there's that in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we keep them in the role of mentorship?
Well, let's start with the first issue. The first issue is the gatekeeping. And I believe gatekeeping comes down to fear of employment, right? So a guy will have this in his mind that the more he knows, the more valuable he is. And that if he shares the information that he knows, he's likely to lose his job and be of less value to the organization that he's in. And that's a fair assessment because that can happen. You have a lot of times where ownership, especially in the independent world, is going to be like, well, I've got the information from this guy and I'm paying him X amount of dollars per hour. I don't need him anymore. Screw him. I have the information. I can train someone younger and cheaper to do that job for me now. So that's where you're going to see the gatekeeping part of that. And then secondary part is he goes and starts his own. Well, that's what I had to do. I had to leave and go and start my own. Now, did I badmouth the other place? Probably. Not as much as I could have or probably should have, given the circumstances or what had happened. I just had to go out and say, okay, well, I can do better than that and build from there. The circumstances surrounding gatekeeping and the sharing of knowledge is ongoing. I still do it. Like I'm very careful with what I share information wise on the forums and on the Facebook pages because I don't want the local guys knowing what I'm doing or how I'm doing it because they will absolutely run the prices down to the ground. It's a race to the bottom, do as cheap as possible to screw the next guy over. Right. And that's a common problem in the industry too. There's no price protectionism that's across the board. Everyone wants to do the cheapest while still making the most money to bury the other guy. So the techs are the same way. They're going to gatekeep to keep themselves valuable and employed, and they're not going to mentorship unless there's a reason to and a valuable reward to. So for the most part, the only reason for those guys to finally let go of that information and share it is they're either physically incapable of doing the job anymore and they have to get into a teaching role, or they're near retirement or at retirement. And now they're like, okay, I've got what I can get out of this. This is all I can do. Now I'll finally let you know what I know. And it's really a problem because how do you train new
Yeah,
guys and give them
I
that
think
sphere of
that's
information
a
if you're not
push
willing
and
to share
pull
that information?
situation. So the one thing that I want to look at is like even transmission side and general repair. Looking at that same aspect of bringing somebody in and then worrying about that they're going to take over and do something, and then the gatekeeping side of it, and then try to move forward. If there's enough benefits, there's enough pay, the work atmosphere, the management, and how that all comes together. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that more of the problems that arise and why that happens of somebody going somewhere is due to management or problems within the shop.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%, right? It's been said many, many times. People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. That's a common saying in business, right? You don't quit a
Mm-hmm.
job because you don't like the job. You quit because you don't like your boss. That's what drove me out of where I was before. It was the reality of that. It was we had an environment where
Yep.
repeating the same mistakes, and the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Well, this was going on and on and on and on. Couple that with um, like workplace drama and false promises and false hopes and all these things. And eventually you get guys who just break down and like, okay, I've had enough, and they walk out the door. And some of them will take clients with them inevitably because they might know some, or some will try to sabotage the business, like the example you gave. They're trying to say
Yeah.
those guys are terrible and I'm better, come and deal with me. It's not necessarily the right thing to do, but it's something that definitely happens. So it's how do you train both the new guys as well as the old guys? Like, we need you to pass this
All right.
along to
So
the
I'm
next
gonna touch on
generation
that because that's
to
what I've been
keep this
doing,
industry going.
especially at the dealership. And I will tell you, when I started with this about 6 months ago, I'm like, this is going to be a really good chance for me to bring the outside perspective to these guys that have been here for over a decade, and even people that I've worked with that have been at different dealers, and they're all looking at me like, why are you trying to find the root cause of the problem instead of just replacing the part? I'm like, I want to know and understand why it failed in the first place, kind of deal.
That touch on that rebuilding. When we talk transmissions,
Yeah.
rebuilding, not assembling, not parts replacing, comes down to that mentality, right? If you're a rebuilder, you know how to put that transmission together for the cheapest possible sum of parts,
Yeah.
knowing it's going to go out the door and work for the maximum amount of profit. That's a rebuilder. The guy who throws every part in the catalog at it and assembles it together, it still may work, and it's probably going to work.
Yes.
But has he made as much profit as possible off of that unit? That's more along the lines of an assembler. So having the mentality of what's the root cause of the failure is the best mentality to have, because that way you become the most knowledgeable technician possible as you come down the road and figure out, okay, this is why this failed. I know that I can fix just this, and it's likely to last this guy 100,000 more miles and not be a problem, not be a comeback. And I've solved it for the least amount of expense up front, made the most possible profit. I've got the product down the road reliably, customer reliably, and everyone is happy. I'm happy the tech have solved the problem. My boss is happy we made the most possible.
And that's what I kind of look at when I look it over.
If reliable.
Like, even if we, like, I've seen some of your videos, like everything's like totally completely wasted, and then trying to find and then going through good core parts to put everything together to make it work at the least amount of parts and keep the profit right and not waste the customer's money in the wrong place. So even keep up with that stuff. So that's what I've kind of been bringing into these guys, and they're seeing that. Like half of the 10-1000s that come in through the shop, Ben is the diesel guy. He's like, I want you to fix this thing. I don't want this guy fixing it. But I've walked. Yes.
Those are whole episodes.
And, you know, I was worried
an entire episode
when the transmission guy was putting it all together, and I could smell the burn into it, and I saw everything that failed. And basically at the dealer level, you just do a full, anything that's damaged, you fix everything, put it all back together the way that it was, and put a new valve body, converter, pump. I mean, just like you're throwing the parts at it, the parts cannon, in order to fix it. So he was going through it, and I just watched over. I'm like, just cross our fingers here on this one. And if you have a problem, I'll pull it out and I'll go back to it and I'll find it. You just don't worry about it. You're getting paid under warranty, and I'll fix it, and we'll make some content off of it and make some money that way. So,
did you watch The Simpsons back in the early days of The Simpsons? Do you remember old episodes of The Simpsons? And do you remember Homer with the makeup shotgun? And he shoots the makeup shotgun in Marge's face and just blasts her with every possible makeup at once. That's how these guys treat it, right? It's just
his mentality of like where these things are going into. He was like, I didn't get into this to build 10-speed transmissions, and I get it. I understand, because he's at the mercy of doing everything under warranty and not getting paid for it, what he's doing. So he's shotgunning the whole thing. Anything that's wrong with it, anything that's damaged or messed up, he is like throwing everything at this thing to fix it, put it back together, and shoot it down the road. The only thing that I asked him that I was worried about was, did you air check it? He said no. And it worked. He's lucky. And it worked. That
Good. Well,
agreed.
On my opinion, I would rather build a 10L1000 all day long than a 4L60E. I would rather, like, you have less headaches. I find them easier to air check. I find them generally, is it big and heavy? Yeah, it's big and it's heavy. But the unit itself is a lot less BS up front. Like, the gear train is all one piece, one unit. It either turns or it doesn't turn once it's in the case. You've either got that last clutch to get in the splines or you haven't. So, and I understand him throwing everything at it because he's at the mercy of the
whatsoever. And we've been colleagues for like a decade, and I just want to make sure that I don't want him to make an error. I'm kind of just
I don't know. You can make an error on a 10-speed if you throw everything at it. It's probably going to work. Like, but it's true. Like, if you grab the unit and you turn it by hand, input and output, and it turns freely, it's probably close enough to actually work, right? You're dealing with strictly valve body and hydraulics and whatever else. Like, the gear train part of it, you probably can't mess something up there unless you put a bearing in upside down. But if you did that, it's not going to turn by hand freely. That's a conversation that we're off the mentorship topic now. We're on to like technician side and stuff again, just because that's our nature, being nerdy techs that we are. It's like when I try to teach a guy to do differentials, I'm like, the best way to learn how to do differentials is take apart a good one. Get a feel for what a good one feels like. Because if you get the first diff in, you come to learn how to do a differential, and it's wasted, you're dead in the water. You want to start on a good differential that you know how it feels and turns. Okay, take it apart, but I do that. Okay, that's how a good diff feels. You get one that's already wasted. It's like, wow, how is this supposed to feel? Feel is a big part of our industry, right? You drop a piston into a drum. How does that air feel coming down? To make the sound going in. When you hit it with the air, you get that thump, and then it goes like.
Well,
feel and hearing and the senses are super important. But we're off the mentorship topic.
All right, so
now,
in that light,
break the ship. Break the ship.
Where everything was, something changed. And it has been extremely hard for me that I'm going to have to say this, and I'm just going to have to be blunt. All right. So in the company that owns all of the dealerships, got shareholders. This is not a family-owned dealership or anything like that. Is that
Okay.
they have what happened during the middle of COVID, what is called the Tech
Makes
for
it
Life
tougher, too.
program. So everybody has a 30-hour guarantee, and they're allotted everything above that they turn as far as their flat rate hours. And once they hit 40, they have a bump for a dollar. Then they hit, or no, it's a dollar when they hit
Okay.
50 hours, and then $2 when they hit 60. Well, apparently in the last month, somebody at another dealer was, what I'm told, was abusing the system entirely, like not doing anything at all and just not turning any hours at all, and then they removed it all. So there is no guarantee. There is no Tech for Life program whatsoever through the entire dealership. And what they did was they removed the bump pay as well. If you hit 50 hours or 60 hours, they have it now to where it's $1.50 for every hour that you turn for 6 months. And then you get a bonus in every 6 months. This is flat rate.
And this is hourly or this is flat rate? Okay,
It's
so
all in the
you guys
contract.
don't
No, there
have
is not a
labor
labor
laws
law
for
as
this type
far
of
as
stuff?
this. How this works from the automotive industry in the States is that the flat rate technician is paid by the hour, by the book time basically at the dealer level. And there is no time and a half. There is no time
But
and a half or any overtime or nothing like that.
yeah, I can't comment on how ours works. Like, yeah, we're time and a half once you're past 40 hours a week of physical actual labor, but you're
Correct.
not time and a half. Let's say a tech who
Correct.
only works a 40-hour week is billing 60
So
or 70
there's
because he's just
actually
that good.
a
He's
bad
not getting
side of
time and a
that.
half for
Once
that.
they hit
Right.
certain, I think we calculated it out a couple of years ago that once they hit like 51 to 53 hours, that the tax rate starts taking more than you're actually turning beyond that. So then you're technically losing money at that point. So there's no incentive to hit 60
absolutely.
for an additional $2 an hour. So that's where it's been a hindrance to the other guys at this point, to where they've got ASAP students and now they're worrying about stuff. So they're not taking a little bit more time in the care of what they're doing. And I'm feeling, and I'm already hearing some things that are kicking back because of this situation, and it's hurting the students to where one of them cussed out another guy, I heard, and then one tech came to me and said, "Hey, this person wants this ASAP student, or this ASAP student is not jiving with this guy. You want to take an ASAP student on with you specifically, other than just talking with Alex?" And I told him, I said, "It's fine with me. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other what this system is. It's what and how I'm mentoring them and opening their eyes to how the system is, and now showing them what percentage of the actual labor rate that they're getting paid." Because there's been 2 labor rate increases massively in the last 2 years, and now it's on a floating labor rate.
So what are your labor rates and what are your billing rates down there for this? For example, like what's your tech getting paid and what's your shop billing hours?
The labor rate walking in the door is 164 for the initial hour dive. As it goes up per tenth, per
164.
tenth it floats up to 186. So anything major,
that's the dying thing.
yeah. So we're looking at that.
So
average is $40 an hour.
And what's the tech pay rate on that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's still pretty
It's not a
good.
terrible wage, honestly. $40 an hour US is a pretty good wage for most guys. Right. So that's disputable. Yeah. And your tax system is different and your healthcare is
Yeah.
different and everything else. But that's still a pretty
So
good
if we
wage
take that and what I've
for a
looked
guy who's not
at,
like an elite
a
technician. That's a
median
pretty good
across
wage.
the board, that most shops are at $200 to $250 an hour. That's like in depth and heavy line all the way up. And I've seen some instances where it's $400 an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Jeez.
one
That's outrageous.
tech said this.
And I'd say so.
Yeah.
So even say at
So if it would still be
$225 an
the
hour,
same,
that
so
tech is
if you
still
take
in the
and look at
$40,
about
$50 an hour
30% of
range.
what the labor rate is, because if they're having to increase it,
Right.
should the tech's pay increase along with it?
It should. I have two kind of feelings on this. Is one, I feel the dealership is probably fat at the top. Um, my opinion right now as an owner, operator, technician, I mean, I'm doing absolutely everything at this stage, and I'm okay with that. I live a very unique life compared to most people, right? The two hardest jobs in the actual
Mhm.
dealership in any repair facility are going to be the technicians themselves actually doing the physical work, and they're going to be the service writer who's going to deal with the public, because the public is the absolute worst fucking part of this job right now. Pardon my French on a podcast, but the hardest part right now is you're basically a counselor for customers because of the way they treat the people on the phone, the people out in front of them, and the person. If you're a tech and you're shielded in the back from having to deal with the front side of dealing with people, there's some value to that. And I know
Yeah.
Chris Craig was going to have some sentiment in that respect too, but he's not wrong because I do both jobs, right? So those are the two most important part of the job. And then the rest of the dealership fat as far as like 2 or 3 layers
Yes.
of management, who knows what's going on there, advertising, promotion, massive amounts of overhead, everything else going on there. I feel like those are probably the ones who aren't genuinely feeling the pressure of working in the industry. Like they have some pressure, but they're not having the pressure that we're dealing with on the back end of it.
All right.
God damn it, my storage unit. Give me a sec.
Yeah, I don't know why it's taking up
I'll clear
storage
some more
unless
for
it's
you.
just all saving it directly to your phone instead of the cloud. That's a first. It's probably because you're on the phone.
I don't know. It must be. I'll fix that up later. Okay, we're golden. Good to go. Good to go. Yeah, I feel like those two are probably the most, stressful jobs right now are the techs who are dealing with wages and technology, and then those service writers dealing with people. Dealing with the public is really difficult right now because you're dealing with like economic struggles for a lot of people, right? Wages are low, people are fighting and struggling in every aspect of their lives, and a lot of times they're transferring their pressure and their stress onto that sales writer, that service writer, and they're not even necessarily cognizant of what they're doing. It's just the way that they are under so much pressure at home, right? They've either got too many bills at home, or their kids are a problem, or they have family problems, or their parents are elderly. All these things
Yeah.
are happening, and then they're stressed. I'm like, now I suddenly have this car problem I have to deal with, and they're not prepared for that. It's like I've said many times over the years, right? One of the most difficult parts of the job is that like it almost always starts on a negative connotation. Nobody ever wakes up in the morning and says, "Shit, man, I hope my car blows up today and I got to pay a $3,000 bill to fix my car." That doesn't happen. If I was selling televisions, I'd be one of the world's greatest television salesmen because everyone wants to come in and buy a new TV, right? So the sales staff has to deal with that too. And then by the same token is like in the dealership level, you end up in a situation where the service writers and the service managers are now manipulating their jobs to make themselves look good, and they're
Yeah,
transferring that
that's the
pressure
roadblock
onto
in the
those
mentorship.
technicians and creating
That
another
is the
problem
full roadblock
in the
right
service
there.
bay area.
Yeah, because that was what I was going to ask next. Like, what are the roadblocks that we're seeing as far as the mentorship side?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the full headache. That is the full headache, and it runs downhill. And
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it runs downhill because the public is transferring it to those service writers and managers first. And then they can't handle it. They don't have the skills to deal with it on their own without passing it along to the technicians as well. And then the technicians end up boiling in their own minds, and then their work may or may not suffer depending how that technician can handle it. And those are all subsequent skills, right? This is a downhill slope of pressure. I refer to this all the time as
Yeah.
the transfer of pressure. And this goes back to my obsession with sports and with coaching and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I played competitive rugby for 22 years, and there was a term we used, and it was the transfer of pressure. And so, what the transfer of pressure was as a defender, you were trying to put so much pressure on the offense, and the offense couldn't function. It could not do what it wanted to do to score on you because you're applying that much pressure to them. Well, this relates directly to our industry, where you have the retail customers come in the door, and that retail customer is already under an immense amount of pressure, right? They have bills, they have a mortgage, they have a wife, they have kids, they have everything else going on, plus their car is broken. So they're upset. Well, they transfer that pressure onto the service writer. The service writer doesn't necessarily have the coping skills to manage that part of it. So now they're upset. So they pass it on to the service manager, who's then passing that on to the service technician. And the technician is the last line because they're the ones responsible for fixing that car. Well, if they make a mistake or that car comes back, that sends that pressure back to that retail customer who's now sitting the next day their car doesn't work, and it's going back downhill
That
again,
I agree,
creating this
and
gigantic emotional
it's.
cloud for everyone around them.
I don't know if any service advisor has ever had that mentality to either be prepared for that, like right off the riff, or how they're going to respond to the consumer. Depending in that situation, and in trying to set an expectation like right up front, depending on what the problem kind of is and how expensive in some of these situations, going like I've been talking about the electrical systems and how many modules are in a vehicle nowadays, and trying to determine a root cause, and if it's some broke wire up in a loom way deep into the vehicle, and how to do that. And we're trying to figure out ways on how we can reduce that cost in the diagnostic time. But still,
I don't know you can do that.
It's always trying to find a way.
I don't know you can reduce diagnostic cost.
It's going to be like, yeah, because there was something that I came across that my dad has.
It's gotten
in his
so
basement
bad lately,
where it can find how far down the cable a break is, and it's this is equipment that's like this huge, like back in the 50s.
We have that. That's
that came from.
You don't even need that. We don't even need that. That product exists. You can buy the thing on Amazon. It's got a specific name for it. Because amperage is like concurrent to distance traveled and voltage. Like the longer you have to send amperage down the current, the higher the gauge of wire you need to send it, right? I have to find this tool. I'll find a link and send it to you. This tool exists. You can buy it. I'm pretty sure that
the Power Pro
Chuck has talked about this tool before as well on his stuff too. And it existed for years, right? Because it's like a short finder. The Power Pro will do it, yeah. It will tell you how far down the line is based on the amperage draw over the distance that the current goes, right? Because if you're going to send like on a low scale, you're going to send like 50 amps, 200 feet. That amperage draw is going to be a larger draw.
I had a discussion with him about that because I've already talked to him about
it's measuring the amperage draw.
It's a piece of equipment, but it's for radio cable, right. So it has nothing for like duplexes and repeater systems. So
yeah,
I already kind of discussed that with Chuck. He didn't. I think he knew what it was about, but he hasn't seen that in the automotive. So I do need to bring that up to him.
Yeah, no, that's how it works. I only know that because I have friends who are like industrial electricians, and I have like pieces of equipment go down to my shop, like parts washers, and so I have to call them and like, yo, how does this work? And we're back and forth, and the other was explaining to me how industrial electricians work, but that's how it's going to work in our world too, right? Because we have a module that's going to draw X amount of amps over. So if you know, okay, let's draw in this amp this way, you're changing this wire. But I'm
Sorry.
not the world's best
Yeah.
electrical guy. That's for damn
Yeah.
sure.
Trying to have to work on everything on every single vehicle and having one problem that's a transmission related, engine related, electrical, and then having data communications on top of it after another. That's another thing that a lot of them that are coming into the industry that are going to have to deal with these newer vehicles is having to work on a larger scale. And
for sure. And that's where it's better for a lot of guys to right away get into a specialty and just specialize and be really good at one thing, right? Like they find something interesting in particular, whether it's they find transmissions interesting, they find CAN bus interesting, they find electrical and lighting interesting. Focus on that. Get really good at that one thing and try to do as little as possible, like in the broader scope.
I agree with that. That's why I ended up
because they'll be more efficient and make more money faster.
Transmission side. We got a huge offer to come to do this with a full guarantee, benefits package, and all that stuff. And I was just nothing but a straight transmission driveline tech, and I had all kind of vibrations. And if it was something that the mainline shop could not figure out, then they would send it to me. Or if the diesel guys were on vacation, then they sent me all the diesel work. So it was the three main things that I'd really focus on is full transmission driveline, noise, vibration issues, electrical, and diesel. And I got through into that. So that's another thing with the mentorship is that what if there's nobody there to teach them that? So if everybody specialized and then that one specialist decided to go off and do something on his own and there's nobody to replace him because of that. And they're throwing some.
Well, sometimes that's just a matter. Sometimes it's a matter. You just got to suck it up, Buttercup. Like you got to make a decision what's going to benefit you the most. I mean, most of us, all of us, probably got thrown into something at one time and just said, "Hey, figure it out." And then either you figured it out or you didn't. And the guys who are good will just figure out whatever problem is thrown in front of them. And the guys who aren't, well, they're probably out cutting grass and doing landscaping.
Yeah, I've seen some shops shut down that one section, like we can't take in transmission work because they don't have a transmission
what your
guy.
passion is.
I've seen that.
100%. Yep. You see that more and more. I've seen more guys walk away in the last 5-6 years that are like relatively young, like in their 30s, that walk away from the industry 100% because they can't handle the pressure or the technology level of it. And these are independent shop owners too. These aren't even dealer guys. These are guys who are running their own shops and they've got 2 or 3 guys working for them and they just burn out like, I guess I can't do this anymore. And the next thing you know, they're out doing custom combining in the field, like working on the farm because they can't handle the pressure anymore. They're passionate about the industry. They love the trucks. They love it all, but they just can't deal with it. And they can't deal with the.
I agree with that, and I've had to do the same thing. There's some days that I've just came in and I've even told Alex that, there's some days that I am just so overwhelmed with the fact that I'm having to do this one job continuously over and over and replace 6.2 liter engines that it's just getting old and I'm having to do it under warranty. And I told him, I said, there's some days that I am so frustrated with the management. I am so frustrated with the structure, how everything has changed in the last couple of months. And now Toby is the service advisor. They got her to come over and offered her more money than the Chevy dealer she was at. And now she's seeing one side of headaches she had to deal with and a new side of headaches. Better pay, different type of kind of headaches. And it's just a non-structure she can't physically overcome at one point. And I see that where somebody will leave from one place to the next and they think that the grass is the greener on the other side because everything's good on paper. And we know everybody, but the structuring is something I didn't really expect what was going to happen because I basically told her that, it's really good. I don't have anything immediately that I'm worried about with it. And then all of a sudden it changed. And then I learned.
yeah, one job comes in and it goes sideways real fast. And that's where, like, some dealerships, they don't have the option to say no. Some independents don't have the, the gumption to say no. Um, like 6 liter Ford is a good example of this. I I get a 6 liter Ford phone call. I have no
Yeah.
interest in having the thing anywhere near my shop. And it's not because I can't do it. It's because I know that it's going to be a headache. I know that no matter what I do to that thing, the guy's gonna be back in a month or 2 months with another problem. And it's like every time you open the hood, it's 2 grand. That don't diagnose anything, it's 2 grand. So it's like, okay, how much headache is worth dealing with this customer for, and knowing that no
Yeah.
matter what, it's going to be a negative situation because the thing is such a money pit. So you have to learn to sometimes just say, you know what, be humble enough to say, I'm not the best in the world at this. I really don't want to take this on right now when I know I have 20 other things that I can do. That's a part of mentorship too, is teaching guys to have some humility to it too. Enough to say that no matter how good you think you are, there are some jobs and some vehicles and some problems that you just don't want to take on, you don't want to deal with because they're going to be a giant headache, and you're better off just saying it, let it be someone
Agreed.
else's problem.
And
You can't try to
looking
be a
at some of that, I
hero
brought up
to every single thing that comes through the
mostly
door.
of what I'm going to say to something like
I
that
mean,
is either set the expectations, and
yeah,
if both the consumer and I cannot see eye to eye on the same expectation, then the only thing I can tell them is like, I'm going to have to say that, I can't meet your expectations, and I'm sorry. And that we can't do that.
yeah. I mean, even in the dealership world, so let's say one of the ones you would run into that I would not run
Mm-hmm.
into because it's not my genre is your 1675 vehicles, your Acadias, your Buick Rendezvous, all that front wheel drive GMs, right? You know that those back two crossmember bolts are probably going to be seized and probably going to break off, and they're under the carpet. And the only way to get to those bloody things, if that happens, you got to pull the entire interior up, pull the carpet out, pull everything out. And sometimes it's just better to say to the customer, like, listen, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try and crack these. But if I can't crack these, I can't heat them. If I heat those bolts, your carpet's going to catch on fire. That whole vehicle's going to burn to the ground, right? If I can't crack these, you better be prepared for a bill for labor for 25 to 30 hours because I got to take the entire interior out of the vehicle. And like, I realize, sir, that you're, at this point,
Yeah,
15 to 18
and
year
I've
old
had
Buick
that
Rendezvous is
recently.
only worth
So
six
I have
grand,
a
but that's the reality of owning this vehicle.
the 2013 or 2014 GMC Acadia that's in. That was a part of the podcast, and I've done a couple of shorts on because it came in. It's been sitting for 7 months. The only thing that I knew was that it's been at the dealership a couple of times, and I've been trying to explain this to Alex and mentor him on this entire situation. And I told him, like, you're going to have to really listen to what I'm about to tell you because it's going to be really important. The vehicle's been sitting for 7 months. It has no power. There's covers and heat shields that have been taken off the engine that are thrown in the back seat, parts that are left uncovered, and they stated that the high pressure pump, the low pressure pump's been replaced. So I go out and look, and it's an aftermarket high pressure pump on this 3.6. So I'm like, all right, I need to figure out something from a baseline. Got them to approve 5 hours to look at this vehicle, period. And right off the bat, $186 times 5. And the kickback, and I'm like, already setting the expectation with the writer. I'm explaining everything with Alex on this entire situation, that if they're willing to do that, if it needs a low pressure pump or a high pressure pump, or if it's something chewed up in the wiring. So we need to gauge, what is the expectation from the consumer? Are they wanting to put money into the vehicle? And that's all. That's the only thing that the customer knew, was that it was running before, and they've replaced a high pressure pump and a low pressure pump, and it just sat for 7 months. So walking through this situation with Alex, we got everything approved. I get it in the shop. And I get it in the air, and it looks nice and clean. Cats have been replaced. Nothing's really too bad off. Pulled the battery out. Took 2 hours to get it recharged and fully backed up to where it needs to be, full 100% state of charge. Put it in the car, crank it over, because I could only get a slow crank out of it, could only get 1 PSI from the low side and maybe 105 from the high side. I'm like, okay, so let's figure this out. So going to find out there's no gas in it. So I put 2 gallons of gas in it. I got 60 PSI on the low side. And then I'm like, all right, so I still don't get nothing more than 150 PSI on the high side. I'm like, it's a bad aftermarket high pressure pump. So I do that, put a new high pressure case, everything. The only thing I add was the part. Like, all right, we've got all this stuff into it. The time to do that, I've already pulled everything out, inspected the camshaft on the head. Everything's fine. Somebody didn't screw up. And prove that, put everything in, and check the oil level. Oil level's fine. It fires up, and it reeked like fuel at this point, like stray fuel. This is where it gets really bad in a dead miss on cylinder number 2.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm smelling the oil. Smells like straight gas. That's why the high pressure fuel pump was replaced in the first place. And it just dumped straight off in the engine. Do a compression test on cylinder number 2, 70 PSI. Make the call. And yeah, and what it is, one of the injectors is for cylinder number 2 is stuck wide open at the same time. So this is where we're going to stop. They've already approved X amount. We're at this point, and everybody's on the same level. And I'm going back and forth at this point, arguing with service writer and a service lane manager. And this is where the younger guys need to understand at this point, to where when they have that comeback and they feed back to you and you tell them that this is what it needs, this is my professional opinion, this is what we diagnosed, this is what we went over with everything, and this is what I'm going to tell you what it's going to need. Don't come back to me and say, well, try this. What are you going to sell? $800 worth of injectors, and it might fix it, and try to put some oil in the cylinder to bring the compression back up. And if it doesn't, and we can't save the engine, then guess what? You just wasted the customers more money, or the dealer's just going to eat it. She's at the point.
Yeah, no. You know as well as I do that compression is mechanical.
No,
if you don't have
but it was
compression,
just cylinder wash
anyway.
from the stuck open injector.
An injector's not going to fix bad compression. No. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. The rings were washed down. That cylinder was done. But that's experience too.
Right.
Like, you didn't know that coming out of school. That came to you, 10, 15 years down the road, having ran into it before. Because that's a fundamental that's not taught in the school, right? Like, you're not learning basics of, okay, this motor has no compression. It's probably not going to run. You figure that out later on. Like, yeah, they taught you about compression, they taught you about 2 strokes or 4 strokes, but they didn't give you the basics of saying, hey, you take this motor and put a compression tester on it, you're only seeing like, 20% less across the board. They can see that,
just looking at basis of fuel, fire, compression, and they just go straight to compression, have no compression, and they don't check anything else because we've got high pressure, rail pressure. Yeah. They don't know that the injector is just dumping off. They replace the engine, and then they do the same thing by putting the injectors right back in that was in there.
Right.
Yeah. So that
because the bad injector is back into a good motor, and you're right back to square one again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that. But that's experience too, and that's a matter of teaching guys that too, right? Like, and we're back to again full circle to
root cause
20-something minutes ago
before we
cause of failure. Right. The failure. What was the root cause?
So let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're an hour and some change deep here.
Let's see if we can put a period on it and see. Let's start with this, because this is something. How can the industry as a whole do a better job of preparing the next generation through mentorship? Yeah.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I'm 48 this year. I mean, I see myself as having 78 years left of having to work. There's a difference between having to work and wanting to work. And so I'm in that position for a bunch of very fortunate reasons. One is my wife is fantastic. She has a great career. She's planned well for us. She's saved well. She's invested well. I would not be where I am today without
Yeah.
her. By the same token, she would not be where she is today without me. Because she's a very driven career lady. So at 48, I see to myself, okay, when she's ready to walk away and her
Mhm.
deadline is she's out at 55. She's out, she's done of having to work. I'll be 58. Okay, so let's say I got 7 to 10 years before I have to work. I don't want to stop working.
Yeah.
And I've said for a while now, I want to be in that mentorship and educator type of role. Now, the problem is for me, can I deliver that message in a way that's not going to probably get the organization I work for in a lot of trouble, right? Because I'm still going to be fairly brash and not politically correct and deliver that message in a way that's probably not socially acceptable anymore in today's environment. Okay, so how do we train the guys like us who are getting near the end of their tenureship to stop gatekeeping the information, to deliver it like
Yeah.
effectively and more socially and politically correct for today's social environment that we're in? And it's well, that's a coachable effort too. Like you have to have guys who can deliver that information to that older generation how to pass it down. I think you'd find that if you were to ask most guys who are past their working days or near the end of their working days, do they want
Yeah.
to do that? Most are yes. But most also want to be compensated for it accordingly, right? They're like, yeah, I'd like to instruct and teach, but I think a lot of them don't necessarily have the skills to teach. They don't have the
Mhm.
it's divisive. They don't have the skills to teach those skills out, right? They don't have the way to do that. So, loaded question. Like, what's the straight answer? I don't know. There's a
Well, here's
direct
an
straight
idea.
answer.
So just like you said,
Um,
that we're sitting like I'll be 44 this year. So if
listen,
if we are at the point to where we're gearing up that we need to figure out something, either a replacement or somebody that needs to come in that to take that time, that's going to be coachable, that's going to be trainable, to either pass it on or try to do that, then we should account for that in the future, because time is limited. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. Yeah.
no, never mind 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Um, but see, we're technicians. I mean, yeah, I'm an owner, but we're technicians, right? That's a business management decision. That's an ownership decision. That's a like, can you as a business afford or not afford to have a veteran on staff who even works 2, 3 days a week to train those young guys on basics? I mean, he might be standing around twiddling his thumbs. If he works 20 hours a week, he might be standing around twiddling his thumbs for 10 of those. But is his time there worth any value to you? And I mean, my opinion on it is it is. Like, as I look forward to like where I'm going to be at in 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
I'm a guy who's happy to go in and do that for 10, 15, 20 hours a week just to keep me busy for whatever the wage may be. I'll go change brakes. I have a saying in my shop, like we're not changing brakes on caravans around here, and I say it as a joke, but it's true. Like that's a very basic thing of automotive repair. It's like I'll go do that and teach a young guy how to do that as fast and as cheap as possible for a minimal amount of wage, just because I want to contribute to my community around me. It's can you find those guys now who are at that stage of life who want to do that, not necessarily out of generosity, but because they want to, because they're being compensated in a way that's like appropriate for them. Like that guy doesn't need to make 40 or $60 an hour anymore, but he needs to make 25 for still coming in and having a coffee with the guys. And that comes down to the culture of the environment they're working in too. Are they in an
Mm-hmm.
environment where they feel like they're welcome? They feel like they're having a good time coming in. They may only want to come in at 10 and leave at 3. Are they in an environment that welcomes them to do that and say, hey, I'm here for this? I mean, I'm happy pushing a broom around the
Yes,
shop floor and
exactly.
cleaning toilets. I really don't care about what I'm doing. I just want to go and be in an environment where I feel like I'm useful. So it's right. So how do you recruit and retain those guys and keep them in your environment? Like saying like, hey, Joe, I'm glad you came in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week for 6 hours a day and say, we appreciate having you here, whether you're giving donuts, serving coffee, but we're also drawing a little bit of knowledge out of you on how to operate these vehicles and how to run these tools and whatnot, right? And that's an ownership problem. That's a management problem that most of us. It's a
Yeah, because
step above where we are
if I
in the
was to do
business
that like
chain
directly,
to sort that out.
I would look at it as the shop foreman status. So the shop foreman, there's a couple of them that I do know that do exactly that. They oversee all of the training. They oversee either problems and issues that people are looking at, and they're mentoring those, getting either tools that are necessary, just gathering up stuff and just making sure an oversight of everything and how each individual person's training or level of experience or growth is going and how to handle that. Like even beyond like a shop coach or a business coach. But at the foreman level, being that mentor.
You're still going to have a degree of gatekeeping there if it's a foreman that is in that age bracket where he's afraid of not having a job anymore, right? So it's like that. You said a good word there. You said about a shop coach. It's like you almost need to have that coach there. So you have your shop foreman who's an experienced guy, whether he was a tech or not, and whether he runs the outfit or not. But it's like you almost need to have that coach there, that guy who's like, he's 60 to 70 years old. He doesn't have to work, but he wants to work. He's got enough knowledge, but he's not there feeling like he has to be there. The problem may be now that the industry, technology wise, has surpassed what he knows. And we may end up in a gap here now where
it would
it's not
rely
like
on
it's guys like
like
you and I who
our
can both
age
the grunt
level.
work and the electronics and technical work. Yeah, some of the I think so. I think that that's now surpassed the age bracket. Like I don't think most of the guys who are 60 now have the technology knowledge to deal with where we're at now in the industry. So you got a gap there. It's not to say it's not achievable. It's that you have you have to have a business model, and this is not something my business could do, but maybe a dealership level could do, where you can have what you would literally call a shop coach. Like, hey, here's Brandon. At this stage now, he's 49 years old. He knows technology. He knows the industry. He knows this. He can coach you guys on how to do this. And then you, as the guy doing it, you have to be able to walk into that shop, into that facility, and literally lead it with like 100% confidence. Even if you're not right, you got to walk in there like, you're the big swinging dick of this shop. I know all this. I can do all this, but also have the ability to say, you know what, this is out of my realm, but I'm going to sit here tonight, at home in my own time. I'm going to figure out how to get this solved, and we'll solve this together. And I think that's an important thing too, right? Like you have to be able to both be the guy going into the room who owns the room, who's confident in the room, but also sometimes step back and say, this is a little bit beyond my scope. Let's regroup. We're going to come back to this. We're going to attack this tomorrow. Now the problem is going to be is can ownership and management fund that into their business model to pay that guy to do that? And that's a six-figure job if you're running 10 bays. For sure it is. If you're running an outfit that is 6 to 10 to 12 or more bays, that shop coach guy is a six-figure job. He's probably your most valuable guy on the floor because he can not only step in and train those guys, but he can step in and actually solve the problem when there is a problem.
Ford shop foreman, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I just really recently saw him on the FYP, and he just blasted out talking about this exact same problem. And he was a foreman. He said his salary was $17.50 a week, and for every hour that he turned, like flat rate turned, was $1 for every hour. So he still had that plus his benefits and everything, but it was just like a headache nightmare with management. And he could not get them to understand that the value of the employees that are there. So I see that issue. That is big, and that is a problem with investing into the people that are there, that are worth investing.
Yeah, and you're dealing with the politics of a dealership too, right? Where you have like so many personalities and so much drama, and you've got everybody's fucking everyone, and everyone's stealing money, and everyone all sorts of problems.
And it stems there from the manufacturing end, and it rolls downhill.
Yeah,
still into the independent and the sole proprietor. I see.
and well, it's just human nature and demographics of society too. Like you're just going to run into that because you're dealing with all these people from all different
Yeah.
walks of life working together. And I mean, this is team sports, right? This is what I preach to coaching youth in team sports. Like one of the most valuable things about playing team sports as a youth is learning how to work together with people you don't like for a common outcome. Right? You're trying to win the game despite the fact you don't like this kid on your team. That's what business ends
Yeah,
up
no,
becoming. You got
I
to work with
agree.
people you don't
Yes,
like,
I
so you
agree.
all make a living and go home
And
at
that
night and
was
pay your
another
bills and
thing that
enjoy your
Alex
life.
brought up, that there were so many different personalities in the shop, because I asked him, I'm like, how do you feel about, is there any massive problem with bad hazing that's going on in the shop that I don't know about? I'm like, I want to know the dirt. Tell me the stuff. And he's like, well, there's, everybody kind of gets along. It's not like outrageous or nothing like that. It's everybody, there is a huge mixture, and I know every one of them. But
Oh, and how do you weed out the really bad ones? And then how do you weed
yeah,
out the snaky ones, the ones who like look like they're good, but they're actually like really causing problems on the back end, right? Like you get those employees who like they're the butt kissers and they make the boss think they're this and that and they're great and everything else, but the reality is they're causing the most problems behind closed doors. That like those are really the problems. And I mean, how do you even hire? Like you never know what you're actually hiring. Are the people going to show up on time or not? Are they going to have problems? It's really difficult to weed through the people. And at the end of the day, like any organization is going to come down to the people working in it, no matter what. It's going to dictate whether they fail or they succeed or not, and the conflict is and it's can they work together without having too much conflict. I mean, I can't imagine going back into that environment. I was in that environment where it was on the low end 14 employees and on the high end it was 28, as I can recall. And there was just so much
yeah.
drama and so much bullshit. And like my dog is sick and my kid has who knows? Like it's just
Yeah,
constant
I agree
bullshit
with
that
that. Yeah, I agree
you
with that.
can't get the
I,
product out the door
I
when
do
you're
like the
dealing with
fact that
that
I'm
constantly.
surrounded by
It's
intelligence.
you know,
That's a big thing to me.
yeah. And not even necessarily intelligence, it's care. You
Yeah,
can work with a guy who is not very bright as long as he cares about the outcome, right? Like you can work with people who are not great
I agree with that. Yeah,
players
yeah,
in that
because
sport,
they're
but it's
they're
how
still
hard are they
even
willing
both
to work
ends,
to get to that
and
outcome?
most of that aspect with
Yeah.
their personalities and their care into it that they're wanting to, is that they're eager to educate themselves even more and ask questions and learn from that and learn. Yeah,
Constant constant term I've used in sports coaching again is sense of urgency. Like you have to have a sense of urgency with almost every single thing that you do. You see a guy who goes to his toolbox and he forgets a tool. He's humming and hawing back to the tool and humming and
mm-hmm.
hawing back to the other tool and and he's pissed away, what amounts to at the end of the day, probably 2 hours a day. Well, he's not a productive employee. He's got to go to the washroom. He's sitting on the toilet taking a shit for 40 minutes. Like that lack of a sense of urgency translates into the outcome of the entire shop because those types of employees become cancerous on the other employees. Like, well, this guy's still here and he's getting paid. Why should I try to work hard? And it's not like everyone needs to be a superstar, but there has to be a management that puts their foot
I
down
agree
when they
with that.
see a guy who is that much of a draw on the rest of the employees and says, like, no, you're out the door. Like,
Well, some of the guys have
and
said something.
yeah, and it can be tough if
I'm
you're in a
pretty sure
unionized environment where you can't
they've
fire
joked
anyone.
a little bit about this, and because one of them, I was his mentor at one point. He was one of my apprentices, just doing R&R stuff, and I was teaching him a lot about the transmission side of the stuff. And now he's just full main line. He'll give me some shit every once in a while and just flat out say, "You ain't working on nothing. You ain't turning any hours. What are you doing?" Half the cars of mine are like electrical nightmare issues, problem situation. I've got to rip the whole car apart, and if I down it, I don't have 5-7 bays like I used to do that stuff out of. And it's not like transmission work. You just rip the transmission out, roll the truck out, and then pull it back in,
Yeah.
type of stuff. This is just like more stuff at the same time. And then I have the ability to do all the transmissions that I'm building for GNR at the same time. Like all my
I've been
equipment's
there.
there. This was an amazing agreement that I thought the service manager lost his fucking mind, to be honest with you, to do this and allow this. But they all think that this stuff is a joke. And that is the biggest problem that I don't like, is they think that all of this, the podcasts,
what parts
they think that they think that all of this stuff on social media is kind of like a joke, or they laugh about it because it's like TikTok or it's Facebook or it's Instagram, and it's just social media. And I'm like, there's going to be a day that you made an agreement to do this where everything's in line, and I'm being professional as much as I can into it, but somebody's going to come down and be like, you're fired. I didn't like it.
The problem is that you have to find people who are in a commonality situation you can actually talk to about what is going on, and share information and ideas and regroup. Because if you don't, you lose your mind. I mean, I've said it many times before, and it's a scary thought to say, but I'm glad I don't own any firearms, because I probably wouldn't be here. Things weigh on you, and they draw on you, and you can't get it out. And especially if you're a grown ass man who doesn't have other men to talk about man problems. And I'm not talking about just the industry. I'm talking about like man problems. Man, I got a teenage daughter. I got a 11-year-old son. I got a wife. I got a mortgage. I got bills. I got everything else going on. And you have to be able to find people you can actually have a conversation with, who understand some of the stuff that
you're telling me about that.
I was asked to speak this upcoming November at like a men's mental health thing at a friend of ours thing. Yeah. And I'm like, number one thought, like, do you realize who you're asking here? Like, number one, I'm probably going to say something that's going to like put you guys on litigation. It's just my nature to go off the rails, and I'm, and number two is like, I'm not exactly the most mentally stable guy all the time either. But the conversations, they have to happen, so that even if it doesn't change the work environment, you just had an opportunity to vent the problems that you're having with somebody else who understands the problems that you're having, and then be able to like, okay, I've done it. I've said it. Now I can move forward. I had a conversation about 3 weeks ago with one of my oldest friends, and he was having some real family drama. And I mean, real family drama. Like, his brother's a drug abuser who's got a child with somebody, and his mother's got problems. His father passed away and everything else. And I said to him, like, man, you want to come over? We'll just light a fire in the backyard, play some country music, and rev some chainsaws. He's just like, that sounds
Hubby
like
wants to go to a rage room, right? And I told her, I said, we really need to do that.
Just sit there revving two strokes.
Just release that.
Yeah, just, you have to. And then I think too that the management and the ownership doesn't take it serious. They don't realize like that it's a bigger problem than it really is. And it's not like, to me and you, like we dwell on it. We're dwellers. We'll sit there staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, and like, this is going on because we're guys who want to get to the root problem of stuff. And sometimes you don't need to necessarily get to that solution. You just need to be able to vent. You're like, man, I'd like to get to that solution, and not have people like them think that it's a joke or that it's funny. And it's not funny at all. Like, it's the guys who care, who really care about the outcome. It's a very serious topic. Like, I don't know about you, but how many times you lie awake in the middle of the night just dwelling on something? And it could be a managerial problem, it could be a technical problem, it could be something else. You're staring at the ceiling, it's 2:47 a.m. and you're like, fuck, I forgot to click phone.
I agree with that. And I'll run through a scenario like before I even fire the truck up. I'm like, I've forced myself too many times to step back and go through the entire process, like the full rebuild process. And just like, did I visually see that and put that in there? And I'll start second guessing myself. And I'm like, all right, go back to the bench. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the trash. There's nothing here. And I'm not missing that. And I'm like, okay, we're good to go. Let's fire it up.
Yeah. And how many times you walk back to the bench and there's a snap ring, you're like, fuck, God damn it. And it was just recently, I'm glad everything's cleaned up, and I look and I keep a series of magnets up on the back wall, and I'm working on a TR6060, and there's this little teeny tiny snap ring that holds the reverse fork on, and I've already given the customer the unit. It's down the road and it's gone. And I look on the magnet, I'm like,
and I've done that with 16L80 with George, and I'm like, I don't remember putting a lockup O-ring.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do? I'm like, He's like, we're just going to drive it. If it
Yeah.
don't have
Pull it
lockup,
back out.
then we'll just find out right quick. And then we'll pull it back out. It's a 50-50 shot. What are you going to do? I'm like,
Then you know. Well, that's where I've trained my R&R kid pretty good. Like, make sure there's always an O-ring or a ceiling ring here, depending on what we're looking at all
yeah,
the
and
time.
that's some of the
If
stuff
you
like
come and get me, that's
that
your job.
I've tried to get to
Sometimes
know
you just
more
forget.
of the ASAP students on a personal level, like what's going on with their life. Because one of them just graduated. Now he's a used car tech. And
Yeah.
like everybody used to make fun of him because he would come in late or he would miss certain days. And they just kind of make fun of him and tease him about this on the backside and just a little bit to his face, but never really said anything. And then I just happened to one day have this 96 Trans Am come in, WS6, and there's no service information because SI through GM does not go that far electronically beyond 98. And they threw all the books away. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to All Data and I'm going to look at everything and go through it. And it had to do with traction control light was on, no codes, no nothing. And the traction control or the TAC module, I'm trying to think. Yeah. The TAC module was halfway plugged in. It didn't send any codes. Like the connector was like halfway there underneath the and he was going over everything with me. He's like, man, I love working on this old stuff. I just got into this so I can figure out how to work on my own stuff. And that's it. So I started asking him more millions of questions of like, what's going on in your life and this, that, and the other. And then he comes out and like, well, I have insomnia issues and I can't, some nights I do not sleep at all. So he's got some medical issues that never even talked about. And the more I talk to him, the more I engage with him now and I see where his progress is. He needs a heck of a lot of training. He's thrown into used cars, has no idea what the heck he's doing with half of the stuff.
Yeah, and that's a grown man problem too, like where a lot of men just don't talk to other men. And like you have to build a rapport with at least a couple of guys where you can just bounce, whatever else is going off on you. And it can be anything. It can be health problems. It can be, your parents are getting old. It can be your kid has problems. They just don't talk to anyone. They just completely shut down. And I'm guilty of it too. Like there'd be days where I'm just like, the wife knows. Like, we've been together for 25 years now, and I'll just text her like, I'm leaving the shop. I'm on my way, and it should take me like under 40 minutes to get home. And some days I'm just like, I don't even answer. I'm like, I'm just going for a drive. I'll just be buzzing down River Road behind me here. We got a nice road from like my house that runs up a few miles north, runs around. Just drive down the river. And she doesn't even message. She's like, he's in his space. Just leave him alone. If I get to be more than an hour and a half, she might say, yo, are you okay? And I might say no. She's like, okay, I'll see you when you get there, kind of thing. And you have to have those guys you can reach out to and just say, hey, you want to just shoot the shit about whatever. But the problem too is that, a lot of guys will be like, well, it looks weak. You're a pussy, you're a fag. So you're talking about your feelings and that. And that's not necessarily the case. It's like you have to find commonality to share those problems. Like everybody's been through something, right? I mean, I know you lost a child. That's the hardest bloody thing on this fucking planet. Like that's something I wouldn't wish on anyone. And to be able to talk to guys and say, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. My parents are difficult to deal with on the best of days. They're in terrible physical condition and they're close to 80 years old. They'll drive you nuts with some stuff, but they're still my parents, right? Like my she's a fucking superstar. Like she's an absolute rock star. 97% grade average. She's going to nationals for debate in 2 different cities. But man, she can push my buttons someday. Like absolutely push me off the rails, man. Like I'm grateful that we'll talk about everything. And it's stuff that most guys and most daughters will not talk about. We'll talk about everything. By the same token, it's like I get home and I'm like, would she just shut up? Like I hope that she finds someone who loves her as much as she loves the sound of her own voice some days because she just will not stop talking to me. So that's part of mentorship too, though. Like my employee there, he'll come in and just talk about his weekend then. What'd you guys do? And he's kind of a nerd, whatever else is into video games. He's got a motorcycle we keep in the shop and this and that. But it's just what happened? What'd you do with this? And he's 25 years old, and like I don't think he'll ever amount to being a great technician. It's all I don't think he's capable of
Yeah,
it. I don't
yeah,
think he cares.
I got a couple of them that are kind of that way,
Caring
and
is a
I
big
check on
part.
them maybe a couple of times a week just to drop in and just have conversations. And I'm always getting like kickback from one individual, and I can't for the life of me understand what his purpose is. He went from being a service advisor to a PDI guy, but then he does some diagnostic stuff, and he's like really good up to an extent. And if it gets well
Okay.
overwhelming, then he'll send it to mainline, which is a good thing. But I've seen some hack stuff in the last week come out of him, and I'm like talking to him. I'm like, this is like basic 101. It has to do with brakes, and then it has a brake sensor pad.
Yeah.
Code, open code. And I'm like, did you check the pads? They're like, well, yeah, I was, they were trying to figure out how to fix it because it still had pad life on it. So he just took and wore down a new sensor. The same thing. You just did the
Cut the
same
wires
thing
and
that
tape
it
them
had
together. I'm
to
like,
me.
you're
I'm
doing
like,
something with the
it needs
sensor,
brakes
bro.
and rotors all the way around. I'm like, you put two and two together. It's like, well, now you get to fix it and you get paid for it. Then used car comes back and grabs the ticket from me and makes him do it. I'm like, you just did not understand what you did. He just is oblivious at half the time.
Right. Well, and then you wonder, is he actually oblivious, or is it that he's got something else going on that's become a mental block that he can't turn it off to go to work and then turn it back on once his workday is done? And that's a big factor too, is how many guys can put aside whatever the hell drama is going on at home, get the work done that needs to be done, and then go back to being at home. And over the same token is a lot of guys who can't turn off their work and go be at home. And I'm pretty good at that. When I leave, I try to leave almost everything I can there. It'll weigh on the wife. Every day she's got to have an hour long venting session when everything's going on at work, and that's okay. That's just how she operates, right? But there's guys who just they can't turn it off. They leave work and they stew and they stew and they stew. And this may be this kid's problem too. He may have so much going on in
Yeah,
the background that when he gets to
maybe
work, he can't function in a work environment.
he like no signs. It might be one of those that has no signs of anything, doesn't express anything. Even if I talk to him and ask him about stuff, he's just oblivious to it. And it's just like, I mean, this is common sense stuff. He really should not have missed this, but he could. Yeah.
Well, sometimes those are the guys you worry about the most, the ones who don't say anything, right? The guys who throw the temper tantrums and have the blow ups and the breakouts.
Yeah.
Sometimes those guys are
Agreed.
more stable than the guy who doesn't say anything. That guy who didn't say anything is the one guy who one day, right? So, and it's not that he's a bad guy or bad tech. He just may have something else going on he doesn't want to talk about. Wife, girlfriend, kids, mother, parent. Who you don't know. And even if you probe him, he doesn't know. And then by the same token, at some point, you may just have to let go and let him leave.
Yeah.
Because if a guy doesn't want to be fixed, he can't be fixed. Right? Like, and at the end of the day, like this is the hardest part for a lot of guys to accept too, is that the business, the numbers, the money, it doesn't care about your feelings. It really doesn't. It's if the business is failing, the business is failing. And if one guy's taken down, that guy's got to go because otherwise it'll sink the entire ship. And it's sad to say that, but sometimes you have to just do it.
Yeah. Well, it's about midnight here, and we probably.
Yeah, we're running out of time. Is it that late? Yeah. We got way off topic.
I mean, I think it's really good.
Do it again or stay on topic.
Especially
this might not be the best topic for me. I don't know.
It definitely will be.
Cut it down.
I'm just going to throw it into automatic
like,
and go and just review it because I'm going to sit here and watch all of this all over again. Yeah,
Fuck, you got more patience
same
than
here.
I do. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I might pour one more half glass of wine and go to sleep. I got to work tomorrow. It's Easter Monday here, but I'm
I've
still going.
tried to get
I got
those
three
in the shop.
68
Every one
RFEs
of
a part of
those
the bench. I got to
have
finish
been
tomorrow.
somebody that expects a 68 RFE to be of like $3,000 to repair. Yeah, and they just couldn't even
No, they
grasp.
started
I
$6,000.
mean, the writer was basically like, go to the dealer and just go buy one. It's going to be way more than that. And he's like, oh my God. So it sits there for months. Yeah. It's like 3 of them that we tried to do. Yeah. They're all tuned and deleted. And I'm like,
you know what? They're not that bad.
No.
I think it cost me about 70 grand to figure them out, in losses and R&Rs and everything else. They're a good moneymaker now, but you have to understand a couple of things about them and how they work, and you have to understand the customers. That's a whole other episode. We could do a whole episode on 68s. We could do a whole episode on 10 on 1000s.
Yeah,
We could do a whole episode
I entirely
on
agree
6L80s.
with that. Yeah,
those are entire episodes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you next time.